This lesson is focusing on factorising quadratics. A quadratic expression has the general form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b and c are numbers. Note that in a quadratic expression, the highest power of x is 2. The number a is called the coefficient of x squared, b is called the coefficient of x, and c is called the constant term. These numbers can be positive or negative, and the numbers b and c can also be 0. So here are some examples of what quadratic expressions are. The process we are learning about in this lesson is factorising a quadratic expression. This would help, for example, if we wanted to solve a quadratic equation. Such an equation is formed when we set a quadratic expression equal to 0. So for this example, we have x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. This lesson is going to teach us how to factorise this quadratic, which I'm just going to write it in straight away to explain what we can do with it. So here we have x plus 3 in brackets multiplied by x plus 2 is equal to 0. And if we have two expressions multiplied together resulting in 0, then one or both of these must equal 0. So that's saying x plus 3 is equal to 0, or x plus 2 is equal to 0. So when solving this, you get x is equal to negative 3 and or x is equal to negative 2. We found the solutions of the quadratic equation x squared plus 5x plus 6. So what does this tell us? The two solutions are the x-intercepts of the equation. This means where the curve crosses the x-axis. Graphically, this equation is represented by y equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. Here you can see is the parabola and the two x-intercepts, which are negative 3 and negative 2. So the ability to factorise a quadratic is a useful basic skill, which you will need to learn about in this video. However, be warned, not all quadratics will be factorised, but a lot do, and so this process is something you need to understand. So to learn how to factorise, let us study again the removal of brackets from x plus 3 times, in brackets, x plus 2. So when I expand these brackets, I get x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 6, which simplifies to x squared plus 5x plus 6. Clearly the number 6 in the final answer comes from multiplying the numbers 3 and 2. This is an important observation. The term 5x comes from adding the terms 2x plus 3x. So if we were to begin with x squared plus 5x plus 6, we need to look for the two numbers which multiply to give 6 and add together to give 5. You will learn with practice to find these simply by inspection. Using the two numbers which add to give 5, we split the 5x term into 3x plus 2x. These numbers come from the factors of 6, so 3 times 2 equals 6 and 3 plus 2 equals 5. So from here, we're going to factorise out the first two terms. So our common factor in the first two terms is x. So x comes out the front of our brackets and we're left with x plus 3. My next step is I'm going to factorize my last two terms. The common factor here is 2. So taking out the 2, I'm left with x plus 3. From this, you can see that there's a common factor of x plus 3. So we're going to take that out the front, and we're left with x plus 2. The quadratic now has been factorized. Note that you should never get these wrong because the answer can always be checked by multiplying out the brackets again. So let's have a look at an example. Here, for example 2, we have x squared minus 7x plus 12. So we need to find two numbers that multiply together to get positive 12, but add together to get negative 7. So these two numbers are going to be negative, because two negatives multiplied together gives us a positive. So the easiest step that I find when trying to think of what these numbers are is to list out my factors. So my factors of positive 12 that may add together to get negative 7 would be negative 1 and negative 12, negative 2 and negative 6, or negative 3 and negative 4. So when we add these together to see if they give us our B coefficient, this one we get negative 13, negative 8 and negative 7. So we can tell that these are the two numbers that we're looking for. So now I'm going to rewrite this expression, but instead of writing negative 7x, I'm going to write that as negative 3x minus 4x. So x squared minus 4x minus 3x plus 12. So now I'm going to factorize the first two terms. So the common factor is x. So I take the x out the front of my brackets and I'm left with x minus 4 minus 3x plus 12. My second step is going to be to factorize the last two terms. So my common factor here is 3. So I'm going to actually take out the negative 3. So it will become x minus 4. And then I'm going to take out the negative 3. And that means I'm left with x. And I'm left with minus 4. Because remember, if you were to expand this, you would get negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And then we get negative 3 times negative 4 gives us a positive 12. So now you can see that there's a common factor of x minus 4. So we're going to take that out the front. And it's multiplied by what's left, x minus 3. So let's do one more example. So example 3, we have x squared minus 5x minus 14. So we need to think of the factors of negative 14 that add together to give us negative 5. So factors of negative 14. So in this case, one of them are going to be negative and one of the numbers are going to be positive. So let's list out the possible factors. So we have negative 4, 14, negative 1, 14, 1, negative 14, negative 2, 7, negative 7, 2. So now let's see which one of these factors, pairs of factors, add together to give us negative 5. So this will give us 13, this one gives us negative 13, this one gives us positive 5, and this one will give us negative 5. So our two numbers are going to be negative 7 and 2. So we're going to rewrite this negative 5x as negative 7x plus 2x. Okay, so now our next step is factorizing our first two terms. So our common factor is x. That comes out the front, leaving behind an x minus 7. And then our second step is going to be to factorize our last two terms, where our common factor here is 2. So bringing out the 2 out the front of our brackets, we're left with x minus 7. Now we can see that we have a common factor of x minus 7, so that comes out the front. And it's multiplied by what's left, x plus 2. Clearly, when you have some experience of this method, it is possible to avoid writing out all these stages. What you need to do now is carry out the process by inspection. That is, simply by looking at it at the given expression, so we're going to look at this one, and we're going to decide in our head the numbers that need to be placed in the brackets to do the job. So here we have x squared minus 9x plus 20. So we need to try and place the correct quantities in the brackets. So we can go ahead and put our brackets in straight away. Because this is an x squared, clearly we need to put an x in both of our brackets. So now let's have a look. We have 20, it's positive, and we have a negative 9. So two numbers need to multiply to get 20 and add together to get negative 9. So these two numbers that multiply together must be a negative. So now let's think of our factors of 20. So we could either have negative 1, negative 20, but that would give us negative 21. We could have negative 2, negative 10, but that would give us negative 12. Or we could have negative 5 and negative 4, which gives us negative 9. So we can pop those numbers in straight away. So the answer, make sure you can always check your answer by multiplying out the brackets again. So you should never be really getting it wrong. So let's have a look at one more example. So this example 5, we have x squared minus 9x minus 22. So again, we can go ahead and just set our brackets up straight away. And there's an x squared, so we know we need to put our x's in there straight up. So now we have negative 22. So we need to think of two numbers that multiply together to get negative 22, but add together to get negative 9. So just by inspection, I know that there's going to be a positive number and a negative number, because this number here is negative. So let's think of the multiples of 22. So we could have 1 and negative 22. We could have negative 1 and positive 22. But just by thinking about those numbers getting added together, would they give us negative 9? No, they don't. So the numbers that, by recognition, I know that the multiples of 22 could be 11 and 2, and those numbers can make 9. So thinking about 11 and 2, this has got to be a negative 9, so it's going to be a negative 11 and a positive 2. So when we expand this out, we should get x squared. Let's just do that one to check it. X squared minus 11x plus 2x minus 22. And then this simplifies down to negative 9x. If you can't manage to do these by inspection yet, don't worry. Do it the way we did before. Your ability to do this will improve with practice and experience. All of these examples involved quadratic expressions where the coefficient of x squared was 1. So you see how there's no number in front of all of these examples. When the coefficient is a number other than 1, the problem is more difficult. So can you have a go at factorising 2x squared plus 11x plus 5? Use your new knowledge and understanding from this video to give it a go. Thank you for watching. The next video in this series will be on factorising quadratics of special cases.